fun doing this and celebrating Black History Month with you. I hope that this Black History Month has meant something more in your life than those in the past. Be blessed, keep hope alive, keep faith strong, and be God's people. These are liberty, let our rejoicing rise.
In that, one thing to talk about is mainstream Christianity in America is white Christian nationalism, and with a racial underpinning. But one of the problems here is that most churches do not really grasp the core of the gospel. Jesus said, "Love your Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength," vertical, right? And love your neighbor as yourself. Horizontal. You have to have both to have a cross, and you have to have both to have real spirituality. And if we had what real spirituality tells us we must do is struggle against these forces of evil, and racism is one of them.
Evangelical world, and how he was ostracized, and even by people that were near him, but yet he still moved on. You can die knowing that you did what you were supposed to do, and somehow the seeds of your death will sprinkle and be pollinated and impact generations after you. That right there, to me, is the greatest inspiration of a life like Dr. Martin Luther King. It's really not one, it's the balance of two: grace and justice. And working through the need for justice, you have to have grace, because in fighting for justice, if you don't have loving grace, balancing your view of justice, you'll become bitter. And so having them on the scales, fighting the tension of loving people, being gracious to people, yet speaking truth and challenging it. You want to speak the truth in love so that it's not done without love and turns into condemnation, but you want it with love to be edification. So I think in this season, that's a huge deal for me to remain, hopefully in some ways, balanced, or living in the tension of fighting the reality.
Discovering about people, even those who don't necessarily claim any religious background or current religious belief, is that everyone likes to be caught up in a movement, whether it be Habitat for Humanity or a community park cleanup. That's because they want to be a part of the movement of helping other people. So I believe we mobilize people by helping them understand that it is bigger than a Sunday morning experience. It's about being the hands and feet of Christ throughout the day, throughout the week. For God so loved the world that God gave Jesus Christ. And for me, that is the universal blanket of the greatest representation of love that ever existed. God's love is all present, all encompassing.
Identity, I think, is essential for agency, that we got to know who we are. That philosophical statement, to thy own self be true. If we don't know who self is, how can we be true to self? Or the golden rule, do unto others, you have them do unto you. Love your neighbor as you love yourself. If you don't love self, you can't love neighbor. And so one of the things that I'm grateful for in my theological education is letting go of the warped Christianity that I learned in my home church and in my family life, which is the kind of Christianity that stomps out the self, that says it's what joy is Jesus, others, and you. And it's like, no, joy is you got to know you first, got to know self first. Because if I put other people, what the warped Christianity allowed me to do was make myself into a doormat, allowed me to consent to my own abuse, allowed people to take advantage of me, allowed me to put blinders on and put my head in the sand and ignore and not listen to my gut, not listen to the antenna going up, not listen to when I was in harm's way.
The blood of black people is crying out to God and to whites from the ground in the United States of America. The blood of Sandra Bland in Texas and Tamir Rice in Ohio. the blood of the Emmanuel 9 in Charleston and of Eric Garner on Staten Island, the blood of nearly 5,000 lynched blacks, the blood of Nat Turner, Denmark Vesey, and Gabriel Prosser, and the many thousand gone, millions gone on the auction block and under the lash and during the Middle Passage. Black blood is crying out to God from the ground all over this land. Is anybody listening to the cries of black blood? That strange fruit that Billie Holiday sang about? Blood on the leaves and blood at the root.
Kinds of distortions not only permeated the world of white Americans, but sunk deeply into the souls of African Americans. If one was to believe these lies about his own people, then how could he achieve the confidence to break the mold? In 19 books and dozens of published articles, Carter G. Woodson worked to erase that false history and began to help all Americans of all cultures to understand the true history of the African people's experience in America and across the world.
When you think of black people as inferior, it would only make sense, this argument that they had done nothing to contribute to the world. So he's going to point out all of those fallacies and really try to give the black community a rallying point around which to push their efforts, that we really needed to do something to make people aware, not just black people, but white people, about all of the contributions that people of African descent, both on the continent of Africa and also in this country, have.
Can I preach a minute? Yes. All right. Isaiah said in the Bible that any nation that wanted to be a great nation had to do something, and it was said, loose the bands of wickedness, Isaiah 58. Loose the bands of wickedness in Hebrew means pay people what they deserve. Yeah.
We need justice. We need justice. Not just for some, but justice for all. Say we need.
My name is Reverend Otis Moss III. I'm pastor at Trinity United Church of Christ in Chicago, Illinois. Shame on you, Attorney Jeff Sessions, to utilize the Bible to justify abuse of children. Slavery was legal, Jim Crow was legal, but just because something is legal does not make it right. It is an act of spiritual inerrancy. It is an act of biblical heresy for utilizing the Bible to justify the abuse of children. Stop lying on Jesus.
What does the Lord require of us?
That it is in the business of bringing people together. And it's in the business of crossing boundaries. And in a world, may I say parenthetically and editorially, where people are making a sport of building walls, we're in the business of tearing walls down. I mean, how are you going to talk about building walls to keep people out? Either literally or metaphorically. And listen, church, we're not off the hook. We don't have physical walls per se, but we have all these other walls of our institutional behaviors. We're all for the mission until somebody, someone, something has to change.
Muslim and Christian. We established the Abrahamic faith and dared rewrite the Protestant tradition through William Seymour. We, the people of African descent, came through the Maffa, and this is our story.